It's like that Paul Rudd meme where he's like, who would have thought? Not me. Hello, I am Jonah Green, and I used to be a full-time YouTuber for the last 5 years, and then I stopped, and you're all like, what happened? And you're looking at me right now, and you're like, I've heard this before. You, like, left me hanging. Like, Jonah, what about the van stuff? And Jonah, what about the zero waste stuff? What's going on? So let me tell you a little bit of a story. When I made my YouTube channel, it was sort of this thing where I always describe it to people like, imagine you're on a beach and everyone around you is like making these like giant sandcastles, and you look at them and you're like, oh my god, I want to build a giant sandcastle. And like you watch them and they spend like months and months and years building these sandcastles, and they climb up to the top, and then people gather all around the sandcastle and they're like looking up, and the person on top of the sandcastle like says things, and everyone's like, oh my god, yes, like you, yes, like we agree with you and we hear what you're saying and we love what you're saying. And I was like, I want that so bad. And I made this giant sandcastle. Like I spent years and years and years building up this sandcastle, and I like finally climbed to the top of it, and I'm like standing on it, and everyone's like standing at the bottom. They're like, we're so excited to hear what you have to say. And I'm like, oh, I actually didn't I didn't have anything to say. I like built this sandcastle because this is a cool thing to do. For a lot of people, they build a platform based off of what they have to say, but I was 14 and people started following me because like, I guess I like had the right mixture of charisma and swoopy hair, and then I just like had this platform, and it was like, what do you want to say? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm 16. I never like became a full person when I like had all of these people on me. I just was like, I guess I'm just like a YouTuber. Like, that's who I am. I make YouTube videos. And it's like, yeah, but what do you make them about? It's like, that's a good question. So, you know, you spend an entire 5 years with people looking at you just being like, maybe I'm this. And they're like, okay, be that. And you're like, well, I don't know, maybe I'm this. And they're like, okay, but like, be that. And, you know, you never actually end up being like anything. I just want to like sort of briefly go into what my life has been like for the last year, what I've been doing, and what I've learned, because I've learned so much instead of being like, hi, I'm Jonah and I do this, and then letting my personality grow into that because that's all I understood as a teenager who grew up making YouTube videos. To be able to step back and not make YouTube videos at all and say like, actually, who am I, right? And that is, I guess, cliche, because everybody at a certain point like does go through that like eat, pray, love moment where you say like, who am I? Like maybe you're fresh out of college. Maybe for me it was like after I, you know, bought a van and lived in a van for a month and was like, this didn't make me happy. Maybe the problem is not my job or my circumstances. It's like me and the way that I'm processing the world. Because, you know, maybe I actually have like some unmedicated and untreated mental illnesses that therapy could help. So the two main things that I've spent the last year and a half doing, like going to therapy / getting medicated, and also working regular jobs. I should probably make an entire video just dedicated to mental health, but like suffice to say that perhaps when your entire YouTube channel is based around, hey, every 6 months what I do is I have an existential crisis trying to figure out who I am, maybe that's not a brand. And maybe instead that's like, you should go to therapy. Just as important, like the bigger thing that I've been focusing on is working a job. So when I stopped doing YouTube videos, I got a job at a coffee shop because that was really the only thing that I was qualified to do. Because if any of you have been following me for any length of time, you know that I dropped out of college when I was 19. Because at the time, I was getting the opportunities that you go to like film school to get through YouTube. And so I was like, well, I don't want to pass this up. At the time, it made a lot of sense. And so I don't have like any piece of paper that says I have a bunch of skills. And like, while from YouTube, like of course, like I have video editing and I have public speaking and I have lighting and how to set up a shot and all of these great things. You know, I don't have a piece of paper that says that. Again, like, and I think I've touched on this a couple of times, like growing up with an audience on you is a really weird thing. People look at people with followings a lot of the time and they say like, oh, you think you're better than me. But what people don't understand is that like the type of person that goes after a following, especially as young as I was, and this isn't to make a generalization about everybody, but like for me personally, it wasn't that I thought that I was better than everyone, it was that I thought that I needed this intense level of fame and unattainability to be equal to everybody else, right? So it's like just a massive level of like insecurity, but at the same time requiring feeling above people to feel regular. Again, that's therapy is like a really good thing. That's a very important thing to understand, that I built that as a coping mechanism when I was 14 because I was afraid to be ignored. And in the YouTube community, especially when I moved to LA, and for like a lot of the time that I lived in LA, like getting a regular job, like working in a service job, was like the most shameful, embarrassing thing that you could do. And I think that says a lot about like the attitude of people that were in like the teeny bopper YouTube space that I was in at the time. But it also says a lot about, you know, how much I drank that Kool-Aid and the level of privilege that I was living under, because I did not have to work a regular job. You know, I was a teenager, and then I was afforded this like immense privilege of just having an audience and then like being paid for it. I didn't understand the value of money at the time. I would just like make a video and do a brand deal. And even though I didn't like have a lot of money, I knew that like, okay, well, like I can always just get more. And so like when the money stopped coming in, it was like, oh, this is like, this money was valuable and I like should have understood how to save it. And it was very clear. It was like, oh, the lesson that I need to learn right now is just like a hefty, hefty dose of humility. So I worked at a coffee shop for a year and it was enjoyable. I mean, it wasn't bad. I think that there's this level for the first couple of months, there's this like, again, this shame that comes with like sort of the resting off of the privilege. It was sort of like I was faced with this point of being like, hey, you know, you can work a regular job and you can do regular things and still have value. And I think that for me, that was an incredibly important move. I really got my ass kicked into remembering that like, oh, you know, this following that you've been bolstered up on top of for so long is like a fleeting thing and can be taken away and has been taken away. I sort of decided that I knew that I wanted to, you know, be working in some type of entertainment. I understood that entertainment is always something that I've wanted to do, but I figured that the best next step for me would be to go back to college. And so I made the decision sort of at the end of this year where I was gonna move back home to Delaware. Again, like learning that humility, right? Like accepting help and save money so that I could afford to pay for my college education out of pocket. And I did that, and I got a job in Wilmington working at a bar. I was a bar back for 4 months, like bottom of the totem pole. I wasn't even making drink. I was bar backing, you know, cleaning up the dishes, making my hourly plus tips. Like, you can't beat it. I think that there's this version of life that I was always afraid of because I didn't understand how to have value without feeling special. There was a version of life that I had to accept where it was like, there is a possibility that your life goes in a direction that is regular, and that's okay. It's okay to have a normal life. It doesn't diminish your value as a human being. And to view yourself as better than other people because you have access to all of this stuff that other people don't have access to, and to look down on other people, which is something that I am unbelievably embarrassed to admit that, you know, I did. And of course it's because, like, how could I have had the perspective? But the best thing I ever did for my art, for this, like, even being able to sit down and make this video, it's been working in service. And so I've been doing that for up until, you know, March 8th when they announced the lockdown because of COVID-19. Between working at that bar, I was working 45 hours a week at that bar. I was also doing another 15 to 20 hours a week editing footage for YouTube. So between the two, I was working anywhere from 60 to 70 hours a week. And I, unfortunately, during the lockdown, became unemployed from both of the jobs that I was working, which was weird, right? Because I had to go from working 70 hours a week to working 0 hours a week. And over the last year and a half, is really, there's not been a whole lot of art going on. I haven't been making a whole lot of art. I haven't been doing a whole lot of social media stuff. I haven't been doing a whole lot of anything. I've just been working. And so I started to have all this free time again, which is something that I haven't had since I had the privilege of being a full-time YouTuber. In obviously much different circumstances. And it's wild because I remember when I was working at the bar, I remember thinking like, man, I really wasted that time that I had when I was able to work just creatively all day. But I did not have the perspective to appreciate that time. So I didn't. And again, I'm so privileged because I have a place to sleep. I have saved up a decent amount of money. So when this is all over, I am not gonna be in trouble. I'm not lonely because I have my family around me. I'm an incredibly privileged person. So I get to use this time to not be stressing about rent and where my money's gonna come from and all of that stuff. And instead I get to just read and write and draw and make art all day. And so this is all sort of just like a long drawn out letter to you. Say like, hey, I know that I've been crazy, but I promise I went to therapy. It's like we broke up, but I promise I went to therapy. I promise I'm different. Maybe, would you be okay if I uploaded a couple of videos? Would that be okay with you? Because I'd really like to do that. I'm not gonna promise you that they're gonna be every week, but I got nothing to do. And I'd really like to share some of the things that I've learned over the last year and a half. Thanks for tuning in. I actually was able to book a sponsor for a video that I'm going to be uploading next week. I'm very excited about. In case you forgot, I'm Jonah, by the way. Have a good time. It's nighttime over here, so have a good night. You know, if it's daytime where you are, have a good day. I hope that everybody's safe. Have a great rest of your time.